So we are now in part two of chapter 14, and where we left off was um, Jesus um, going and spending time with his disciples. It's his last night before he actually was betrayed. Um, and he valued that time so much, as we talked about. It was so important to him. I mean, here's a person. We know he was the Christ, but he was also the Son of God and the Son of Man. And he foreknew every detail of what he was going to suffer. And he still wasn't distracted by it. In fact, he brought it on. He said, I want to spend this time with you, his disciples, because he knew that once he was sanctified, that he would be glorified, and that then he could send, the Father would send the Spirit, and his body would carry on as it does today with us. And so, as we go in now, we'll be in chapter 14, and we're going to start in verse 32. It says, Then they came to a place called Gethsemane. After they got done eating, well, we know in other gospel accounts, Jesus, um, went and washed the disciples' feet, and many other things happened where they broke bread and they drank the wine and symbol of the blood that he would shed for the new covenant. So now they've left the upper room. Jesus knew that he was going to be betrayed. He knew what was coming on, and it was coming on very rapidly. And so they're in Gethsemane, and Jesus told his disciples, Hey, I'm in turmoil here. So sit here while I pray. He took with him Peter, James, and John, and then he began to be deeply troubled and distressed. Then he said to them, My soul is consumed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch. He brought his disciples that he spent so much time with, Peter, James, and John, and said, Come here, sit with me. I am so troubled. I'm so distressed. Sit here with me and watch. And he said, going a little further, he fell down on the ground and he prayed that if it were possible, the hour would pass from him. He knew exactly what was coming on. Abba, Father, he said, all things are possible for you. Take this cup from me, yet not what I will, but what you will. I mean, if we're going to be Christ-like, this is what he expects of us, the sacrifice that we will make because we put him first in our lives. And that's what he was doing right here and demonstrating for us. Not as I will, but what you will, Father. Then Jesus returned and he found them sleeping. Simon, are you asleep? Why were you not able to keep watch for 1 hour? So watch and pray so that you will not enter into temptation. That's another inside message he was saying, because when we are not alert, we do fall into temptation. We are distracted. We do find ourselves swaying from that narrow path to follow the Lord. And he told him, he said, watch and pray so that you don't enter into temptation. For the spirit is willing, but the body is weak. Again, he went away and he prayed, saying the same thing. Again, Jesus returned and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy, and they did not know what to answer him. They were speechless. It's like, oh man, he woke us up and we did it again. When Jesus returned the third time, a third time he said, Are you still sleeping and resting? Then he just couldn't stay focused on the Lord, on what he was going through, because their own flesh was weak. And he said, "Are you still sleeping and resting? That is enough. The hour has come. Look, the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise and let us go. See, my betrayer is approaching." While Jesus was still speaking, Judas, the betrayer, one of the 12, arrived, accompanied by a crowd armed with swords and clubs, and sent from the chief priests, scribes, and elders, and bigwigs of the religion. Now, the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. The one I kiss is the one who you will arrest. Arrest him and lead him away securely. I mean, Judas knew that Jesus possessed the power of God and knew who he was. So he said, lead him away securely. Going directly to Jesus, he said, Rabbi, and he kissed him. Then the men seized Jesus and arrested him. And one of the bystanders, which we know is Peter, he drew his sword and he struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. And Jesus asked the crowd, have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as you would an outlaw? Every day I was with you, teaching in the temple courts. You didn't arrest me then. But this has happened that the scriptures would be fulfilled. Remember, Jesus came not to abolish the law and the prophets, but to fulfill them. And that's what was happening here. Then everyone deserted him and fled, which was also prophesied. One young man who had been following Jesus was wearing a linen cloth around his body. They caught hold of him, and he pulled free of the linen cloth and he ran away naked because they didn't want to be captured. They valued their lives. They didn't want to be found suffering what Jesus was going to suffer. Then they led Jesus away to the high priest. And all the chief priests, the elders and the scribes, they all came together. Peter followed him at a distance, right into the courtyard of the high priest. And he sat with the officers, and he warmed himself by the fire. Now the chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were seeking testimony against Jesus so they could put him to death. But they didn't find any. They didn't have any testimony. For many bore false witness against Jesus, but their testimony was inconsistent. Then some men stood up and testified falsely against him. We heard him say, I will destroy the man-made temple, and in 3 days I will build another that is made without hands. But even their testimony was inconsistent. So the high priest stood up before all of them and questioned Jesus. Have you no answer? What are these men testifying against you? But Jesus remained silent and made no reply. Again, the high priest questioned him, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One? I am, Jesus said. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of power and coming with the clouds of heaven. At this, the high priest tore his clothes and declared, why do we need any more witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What is your verdict? And they all condemned him as deserving of death. Then some of them began to spit on him. They blindfolded him. They struck him with their fists. And they said to him, hey, prophesy. And the officers received him and they slapped all in his face. They slapped his face over and over again. And while Peter was in the courtyard below, one of the servant girls of the high priest came down and saw him warming himself there. And she looked at Peter and said, hey, you also were with Jesus of Nazareth, the Nazarene. He denied it. I don't know what you're saying or even understand what you're talking about. Then he went out to the gateway, and the rooster crowed. There the servant girl saw him, and again said to those standing nearby, this man is one of them. But he denied it again. After a little while, those standing nearby said once more to Peter, "Surely you are one of them, for you too are a Galilean." But he began to curse and swear, "I don't know who he is. I don't know this man of who you are speaking." And immediately the rooster crowed a second time. Then Peter remembered the word that Jesus had spoken to him: "Before the rooster crows twice, you will deny me 3 times." And he broke down and he wept. And that concludes chapter 14. And you can see that Mark is capturing not only the one who he had already displayed all through his gospel as having the authority of the Christ to be the Messiah, but now fulfilling what his purpose was in this world. And, in hindsight, Mark could understand. He spent a lot of time with Peter. He asked him a lot of questions. Now, his gospel account is more concise, but yet aligns right along with the other 2 gospels that they call the synoptic gospels, being the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. And his accounts might not have all of the details that the others do, but he gives an abstract account all the way up through, as we saw right here, with Jesus being tried in a mockery of a trial, and then talking about Peter's denial, just as Jesus prophesied. And when we pick up again, we will move into Mark's Gospel, chapter 15, Lord willing. Amen.